And a very good morning to you. Welcome along to Tuesdays Off the Ball AM. Wherever you're listening to us, wherever you're watching us around the world, we say hello and welcome. And if we go to the wide shot, we get Owen's camera. Oh, we just missed his cup. How you doing?
Good morning.
Yeah. The last bit of hot sustenance you can get into now before, well, winter is here.
Our armour breading, as they're calling it, everybody who is on kind of no-carb diets has suddenly completely crashed out and is going to eat like 20 loaves of white bread over the next 5 days.
Bread's not bad, in fairness.
It is delicious.
Is that at a tabloid today?
No, I saw it yesterday somewhere.
Twitter?
On Twitter, yeah. I've seen armour breading doing the rounds in a number of places. But that's all we're seeing. It's like, you know, in other countries, you'd see kind of like devastation or real worry. In Ireland, it's just a picture of an empty bread aisle.
Yeah.
And it's like, the worst is coming. The bread aisles are empty. We're all screwed.
Yeah, worst fears have been realised. How have you prepared for armour breading?
I haven't, quite frankly.
Have you stocked up on bread?
I see, we've got this notion. The last time it really hit in terms of snow was, what, 2009, 10?
2010, yeah.
So that January, obviously I would have been...
About 12.
Not quite, I was still in school anyway, but certainly in Kerry, and there is this victimisation complex. It's like Ursula, grand above in Dublin with their gritted roads, and we were off school for an extra 2 weeks, which was fantastic at the time.
Full 2 weeks.
So this is obviously my first kind of armour breading in Dublin, and I'm thinking to myself, well, you know, we had this victimisation complex down in Kerry, now it's the opposite. And everything's going to be fine up here. I'm going to be able to go and...
Now you're going to be an actual victim. I mean, because obviously the capital always gets it worse, right? That's how it works.
Whenever the beast from the east does arrive, naturally it tends to target Dublin a lot worse. But I would imagine that everything's fine up here, right? There's enough salt. I saw on the news last night a big shed of salt being reported from. And everything's going to be completely fine.
Apparently there wasn't enough salt the last time. That's why they're making a big play of, no matter what happens, we have enough salt this time.
Yeah, it's a very interesting PR exercise. Like emails getting sent out to newsrooms and it's like, come and see our mountain of salt. Free access to the mountain of salt before the beast from the east hits. So I'm looking forward to that mountain of salt being put into work over the next 48 hours.
When they called it the beast from the east, I was struck by the fact that boxing used to be really shit. Nikolai Valuev used to be like the best boxer in the world for quite a sustained period of time. Okay, obviously you had the Klitschko's who would never fight him. And then eventually it took David Haye to kind of get something moving here.
Yeah, that was very strange.
Wasn't it? Like, he was crap.
David versus Goliath was definitely one of the strangest top-level pay-per-views that boxing has ever seen. And the fact that he ended up winning it is even stranger. But Valuev is terrible. He was never great.
No, he was terrible. Absolutely rubbish. And kind of like, not really a beast.
No.
He was from the east, but not really a beast.
He just had
a big human being. And I kind of feel like he was a bit victimised because of the body shape he had.
Yeah, he had humongous genetics, basically. That's what led to him being perceived as good. But whenever I think of the beast from the east, I'm thinking Nemanja Vidic, I'm thinking Branislav Ivanovic. They're the real beasts from the east that we got to enjoy in their pomp. Nikolai Valuev, not really top-level beast from the east for me.
I get the feeling that Nikolai Valuev was actually like, you know, a fun-loving, kind of happy-go-lucky character who got thrust into the boxing ring because of his size and then had to chisel out this career for himself. And actually, you know, away from the ring, he was reading philosophy books and helping kids.
Yeah, he reminds me of, it's probably a little bit kind of out of your age range, no offence, but the TV show Recess, so people of a certain age would know that. The kid with the blonde hair, that kind of reminded me of Nikolai Valuev, just this kind of cuddly, nice guy. And
stares all around from the other millennials in the building.
But if you're a millennial and you don't know what Recess is, then I don't want to know what sort of millennial you are, that's all I'm saying. And
Tommy's like,
as you say, the innocent kid in the playground, the bookworm, and he was taken and plucked out of that Soviet system and was like, you're going to become a boxer now, Nikolai. And so he did, and a very average one at best.
Yeah. But, you know, David Haye did the world a disservice by beating him and then eventually getting into the ring with the Klitschko's and going and maybe lulling the Klitschko's into a false sense of security by being so crap against them, which ultimately led to Anthony Joshua, which has saved the whole heavyweight boxing. And now beast in the east means bad weather.
Well, lulled him into a false sense of security that Tyson Fury took him out.
Good point,
and then
good point.
Anthony Joshua took him out.
Somehow I blanked Tyson Fury from my...
I can't imagine why.
Yeah. All right, let's tell you what's coming up today. And that's probably the end of the weather talk. But if you want to share your weather horror stories with us, maybe you've got a flutter of snowflakes outside your window that you'd like to tell us about. I think mostly that we're all just the boy who cried wolf after the big winds came and like it wasn't really that bad.
Well, it wasn't that bad in Dublin. I think say that to somebody from Kinsale and they'll disagree strongly with you. I remember seeing on the news that night of Ophelia, a fisherman who, I'm not sure, was he over here from Croatia or was he a native of Croatia living in Ireland? He was like, I've never seen anything like this. This is incredible. He was just standing on the pier in Dungarvan, I think, and was absolutely bemused by the incredible waves we were getting during Ophelia. So wouldn't write off Ophelia just yet. That was
she's not done.
No,
we haven't quite.
I wouldn't put that one in the books quite just yet.
All right, okay. Making a strong play for Ophelia being the story of the year. Right, Heaslip and Wenger. We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll bring you the back pages. All hail Tomás the Tank, which was which should have been our tab of the day yesterday. That's Tomás Ó'Sé. The GAA versus the CPA. It does definitely seem like it's not a friendship at the moment. It's more of a rivalry. Anthony Moyles is going to join us to talk about that. We'll talk a bit more about Michael O'Reilly, the boxer. Finally found out that it was an anabolic steroid that he tested positive for. He's been banned for 4 years as of late last night, and so will not be at the Olympic Games next time round. We'll talk a little bit later on about the full details of that. And football excuses after Jack Wilshere blamed the referee for his team being annihilated 3-0 and for basically crapping the bed in public. He says it was all the referee's fault. We're looking at some of the other great moments in football excusery or tomfoolery, really. So let's bring you through the newspaper headlines.
Yeah, we'll start with the Irish Times and Jamie Heaslip dominating a lot of the back pages today. The Irish Times saying that the gifted Heaslip may have been the greatest ever Ireland number 8. That's Jerry Thornley's article there, saying durable athlete, was Mr. Indestructible and scaled so many heights during a glorious career. He lists off all the career highlights there. Some brilliant images across the back pages this morning of Jamie Heaslip. This one seems to be the one doing the rounds, mostly him with the tricolour around his neck after the All Blacks game, of course. Injury forces Heaslip to bow out after glittering career. While on the back of the Irish Daily Mail, there's also that image there again. Farewell to a true great, reads the headline in block caps. Cullen leads tributes as Heaslip calls time. Meanwhile, on the back of the Irish Independent this morning, or the Irish Examiner, I should say, they're going with Heaslip, a different story entirely there. They've got a Mike Quirk column at the top about weekend tragedies, putting sport and life into perspective, and then it's a different rugby story leading the way. It's Leah Lyons confronting the terrace cowards. It's pretty grim reading, that story inside in the Irish Examiner about some of the names she was called at the weekend. She was speaking at an awards night. And basically just outlines some of the slurs directed to her from the stands and basically her family within earshot. And thankfully there was enough people in the stands to just turn around to these idiots and say, shut up. And she's spoken out about this. It's a very good read. It's something that I suppose we don't hear about an awful lot. But
no, fair play to her as well. Obviously we don't in any way advocate violence. We'll make an exception for this one instance where she says somebody gave him a good flake of a flag, which sounds like, yeah, fair play. That is probably the only way to deal with these things, not to be advocate violence.
Yeah. It's an interesting one in the back pages in terms of the Leah Lyons story. It's not just Heaslip. And you've also got this other story, Sean O'Brien blow for slam chance. Ireland flanker struggling to be fit before the end of the Six Nations. So, there's plenty happening on the rugby agenda this morning.
I mean, sometimes I feel like we should just do the front page headlines on days like today. Beast from the Yeast is the lack of the stories, and then the other papers are going, oh wow, look, where's that snow? It's from like 2010, and oh Jesus, where's that snow? That's from like 1982. And then bread alert. I mean, come on, bread alert. That's not bad, is it?
I couldn't quite calculate last night whether or not the pictures from 1982 were just whether the quality was so crap that it made it look a lot worse than it really was, or was this actually one of the worst blizzards the country's ever seen?
Oh no, it was like proper
what was it like?
Snow drifting in the back garden. I was 5, so my memory of it is kind of golden. Like, we had about a week off school. You got up, you went out and you played in the snow. You came in when you got too cold, you warmed up and you went back out again. It was great, and because there was no as far as I remember, there was no wind, so it didn't feel freezing. Like, obviously the snow was cold, but
I wonder, is that where the phrase, the long cold winter in Kerry comes from? It was 1982, Seamus Darby had just put the ball in the back of the net, and it was a long cold winter that year, and it's just been kept on every year. Kerry have a bitter loss in a championship.
Which is almost never. Harry must go. This is AVB hurling from the ditch. Shut up, AVB, I think would be the general consensus from most Spurs fans, but Levy says no. Spurs chief vows only Poch decides who leaves. Well, Poch and the agent of the player who wants to get paid is going to decide exactly what the story is there. No real consensus from most of the papers. Second site, runner-up spot is bare minimum requirement for Manchester United, says Smalling. Chris Smalling says that they're interested in finishing second in the league because, who cares? If you don't win, you don't win. Bren Gunn, Celtic's Rodgers on shortlist to become the new Arsenal manager as Wenger faces up to summer exit. Is he? I mean, it's not ridiculous. Like, finished second, would have won the league only for Steven Gerrard's slip.
Yeah. It isn't ridiculous. It's not
He's
great.
done a really good job with Celtic.
He's done a very good job. Yeah, it isn't
Beaten
ridiculous.
season. Plays good football.
What more can you ask from him? For sure. Like, his stock is certainly back to where it
You're
might have been.
squirming as an Arsenal fan. I can see you squirming.
A small bit. Like, there is something about that season where he gets sacked that has ruined his stock, and it shouldn't have done, because everything he's done on a successful level, aka almost winning the Premier League and the unbeaten season with Celtic, should completely outweigh that, but it hasn't. He's tired because of what happened in that Dara season post Suarez.
Claudio Ranieri won the league as well, I suppose, you know.
It's true.
Even mediocre managers.
But like, he's been put in the same bread as Carlo Ancelotti, as you see there. Come on, who are you going to choose?
So, gun for hire. Carlo Ancelotti is ready to step in at Arsenal if Arsene Wenger is axed. You know that whole, I never speak about another manager. Luckily, I've got an agent who you can give a quick call to there, and he'll tell you that I'd be very interested in taking that job, but that'll be off the record, of course.
Yeah, just Ancelotti sitting at home is like, oh no, my agent's at it again. He's going to go get me a very, very nice job. Carlo Ancelotti, though, I'm not sure does he want that job for nothing other than the fact that it might be a long-term project. Does Carlo Ancelotti really want that? It certainly seems to me that Ancelotti likes to go into a club for a little while, get out of there after a little while, get a good contract for a year or so and go back to the beach.
Swans at liberty to see off Wednesday. Premier League outfit should be too strong in FA Cup replay. This is Swansea against Sheffield Wednesday on tonight. And then best from the West. I never really feel like we're from the West. But as a country we are, obviously. So that's the point about the Racing Post is the beast from the East is on its way, but so too is the best from the West. After Willie Mullins rated Duvan's chances of making Cheltenham and a sumptuous showdown with Altior as considerably better than 50-50.
Some of the UK back pages, the back of The Guardian says Guardiola faces touchline ban. FA ready to punish Manchester City manager for ribbon stance like Jamie Jackson and Simon Burnton reporting there. While on the front of the Teddy Telegraph sports section, it is show us your medals. Heroes return following Britain's best ever performance at the Winter Olympics. Heroes indeed. Well done, Britain, on your achievement of, I suppose, a ratio of about £1.5 million per medal, per competitor even. You know, fair play to all 20 people who are funded by, winter sports in the UK. You've done very well and you've represented your country beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, they did decide that they wanted to win medals and then they went and bought the medals, which is how it works. So,
yes.
I don't think we as a country should do it.
No.
But if Britain, with their, sitting on the piles of cash that they plundered from empires and stolen fortunes from around the world, if they choose to spend that winning medals in the skeleton, then who are we, or the curling, who are we to scoff at, the use of their massive amounts of resources?
Well, their massive amount of resources have a 0% influence on, or 0% funding for a sport like basketball, which could have a huge participation rate and that everybody could get involved with, because funnily enough, Ger, it's actually a lot cheaper to install a basketball hoop in a hall than it is to build
fake ice rink,
a tube or whatever you go down a skeleton pipe on, or a half pipe, or you fly your team over to the Alps.
Do they have a half pipe in England somewhere?
There's something in Southampton. That's your man Billy Morgan, not that Billy Morgan, the UK Billy Morgan, who won bronze in Big Air. Is the name of the sport. It's the first time in the Olympics. So apparently he can practice in Southampton. And did I have something in Manchester as well? Maybe something, whatever their version of Kiltiernan is basically. But UK sport isn't funding, as I say, a sport like basketball, which could have huge participation levels. And they're pumping in 5 to 10 million on winter sports.
Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. Interesting piece from Richard Williams today in The Guardian. How does Guardiola feel about being an ambassador for Qatar's World Cup? It was 10 years ago. I didn't realise it was a full 10 years ago that Pep Guardiola took a couple of million to be an ambassador for Qatar's World Cup bid. And obviously Guardiola came out and explained that I am a human first, I'm a football manager second, and so obviously I look at what's happening in Catalonia and have decided that I'm going to stand up for the people of whom I am one and say that this is wrong, and that's why I'm wearing this yellow ribbon. All he's doing is wearing a yellow ribbon at the moment, like, and highlighting that cause and bringing that cause to an audience of millions and millions and millions and millions of people globally in a way that almost nobody else can do. And so there's been a view that his work on the question of Catalonian independence is completely scuppered by the fact that he took money from Qatar to be an ambassador for their World Cup bid, given what we now know about Qatar's World Cup bid and the flagrant abuse of human rights in the building of stadiums. The basically indentured slaves have been working on those. People have died. There has been no duty of care to the people building those, and Qatar and FIFA have gone, well, you know, want to make an omelette, got to break some eggs. And I mean, maybe he is just a hypocrite, and you can't do the Qatar thing and then therefore be in any way credible about what's happening in Catalonia. But he might also be right about the fact that what's happening in Catalonia is complete bullshit, and somebody needs to put their hand up and do that. And so he's doing that while also having taken the money, which was wrong. It's possible that he was wrong then and right now. That's like a relatively straightforward thing.
Yeah, like that's a fair point. Is it worse to be a hypocrite than it is to turn your back on Catalonia, or would you rather him be consistent and turn his back on both causes?
Or maybe he made a mistake, took the money because it was so much money and should have done more, and has learned the lesson of his way. Who knows, right? But Richard Williams has a brilliant introduction when he talks about the FA, and you know, they historically, they don't really have much of a leg to stand on when it comes to criticising people, because in 1938, of course, the English football team did the Nazi salute in Berlin ahead of a match against Germany, and there was a big row. The players didn't want to do it, but ultimately the British ambassador to Berlin said, I have to do it, so you have to do it. And Stanley Rouse, who seems like an absolute scumbag, ends up forcing the players to do it as well, but later on becomes like a fairly renowned racist head of FIFA. And so not a good guy, and this is like a really black stain on the English FA and generally, and it's a really good piece. But then at the end, Richard Williams' piece goes, someone could also point out to Guardiola that 10 years ago he was acting as a paid ambassador for Qatar's World Cup. How does he feel about that now, following revelations about the Gulf states' use of its labour laws to restrict the rights of immigrant labourers, building its new stadiums, and the apparent indifference to dozens of deaths on the project? In the eye of history, his readiness to front for the Qataris might look barely more defensible than the FA's capitulation in Berlin.
Strong words.
I mean, is it really? Like, do you? Is it? Seems like there's a lot of people on the internet finish debates with, it's worse than Hitler, man.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a bit of Godwin's law going on there, from my liking.
Yeah, to a certain extent, but there is also the element of hindsight when it comes to the mood music around Europe in 1938, as in, obviously, if they'd made that decision at the far end of the war, it's like, what the hell are you doing? It's a completely different level. Of course we have the difference of hindsight, but we also have the difference of hindsight here. And, like, did Guardiola know the horrors that were to occur, or that might have already been occurring at the time of the bid? I would be very surprised if he didn't, or a smart man like him didn't even ask questions. Like, this isn't a new thing that suddenly Qatar gained the World Cup rights and suddenly started indulging in human rights abuses. This was occurring before, not on the scale, and certainly not as invasive in the world of football as it is now. But surely Pep Guardiola, as I say, a smart man like him, should have asked questions.
It was a chronic decision by him. It was a chronic decision by Xavi to go out there and front for that as well. Like,
the Xavi one is very strange, actually, given some of the stuff. Xavi seems like an incredibly thoughtful person.
But so does Guardiola. And so, like, I just think that I just don't think that, like, Nazi Germany and that English football team really is the right conversation to be having about what's happening here. I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong about that. Maybe we all need to look at these things in that historical context, but it seems like it's a bit of a stretch to go. Him being an ambassador for that is the same. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe that's what we need. How we need to think about these things. But it just seems that, like, comparing everything to, like, you're effectively bringing up the Holocaust when you're talking about what happens from 1938 on, and maybe we can have conversations today about stuff without automatically referring back to the Holocaust.
Maybe, but that's my hindsight argument. I mean, like you would like to have thought that there were smart enough people in the FA in the 1930s to know about.
The players didn't want to do it.
So the player, but it was the FA top brass who were like,
and the ambassador.
Yeah, this is a good political move from our point of view. Like, I know this is kind of going against my previous argument, but to say in 1938 that there was absolutely no sign of anti-Semitism in Nazi Germany is completely ridiculous. That's completely false.
Yeah.
So there were those signs, and it was clearly viewed as a political move that they saw this thing as a negative trait rather than the thing that would end up defining this whole regime that is essentially the biggest atrocity in the history of humankind. And the FA didn't see the signs of it. They were like, this is fine. This is only kind of a sidebar. And that is the way Qatar is viewed. Whereas it's like, this is only a side thing that's going on. And ultimately, did Guardiola look at the men involved in this bid and were like, these men seem to be decent men?
Yeah, you hope he doesn't. You hope that's not what happened, that it's just a complete oversight and greed got in the way. And so, like, there's not to excuse it, but that it's not like actually, I think that's fine. Because in that case, then, like, it's even worse. It's really bad either way.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't also then be able to talk about the situation in Catalonia. Like, and Guardiola being, it's complicated by his previous stance, but it's not. I don't think that it fully. Human beings are complicated. They make a lot of mistakes and they make bad decisions and they say rubbish from time to time. And then when somebody says something that is meaningful, that doesn't mean we should automatically turn our backs on what's meaningful because of what's been said.
It's what he does next is the interesting thing. That is probably the real judge of his character.
He's going to keep wearing his yellow ribbon, I think.
Well, not in terms of the yellow ribbon, but in terms of his stance on Qatar. What is his next? Is he going to speak about this, put his real opinion on the line, and say, "I regret the initial support. I'm still going to keep working for Manchester City, despite the fact what the owners are alleged to have done and their kind of links to atrocities that are on that par as well." And maybe he'll come out and speak about that, and maybe he'll give an acceptable excuse. But it's hard to see how he backs his way out of this one once he acknowledges the hypocrisy, to be honest, because...
Well, you just ignore it and keep going. I'm talking about this one thing. And this
that's the likely scenario, isn't it?
Yeah. That would... Yeah, it is, because what does he gain by suddenly trying to become a spokesperson on something where he's obviously clearly been bought?
Absolutely F all, Jared. Absolutely nothing. And he's not going to... Like, it would be an ideal situation where he did that, but he's not going to.
All right, we'll move on. You can give us your thoughts on that. YouTube.com/offtheball if you want to leave a comment underneath that. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes' time. Or Facebook.com/offtheball. On to GAA now. We're going to speak with Anthony Moyles in just a moment. But first, some highlights of Slough-Neil and Nemo Rangers at the weekend, courtesy of GAA now. The IB GAA Senior All-Ireland Club Finals will, of course, take place on St Patrick's Day, March the 17th in Croke Park. It's Corofin against Nemo Rangers at 2 o'clock and it's Coola against Napiershig at 3:45. Tickets are available from GAA.ie, selected Super Value and Centre stores and all the usual outlets.
Sammy Bradley-ish. Van der Talon, Chofadle Cormac O'Doherty, shit piece of skill. All in their fan, Chofadle McGuigan. Ach, Tony Crediunt and lot to say. Sheeran Sogni Ronan Bradley. Should the Dirigan Nice go to Vintamach. Agus an Vert Dientenson, agus Dientegus Nasta again Brian Cassidy. Micheál McGrath. Dienach a fight and Fassach as far Dienach Nagabrach. Christopher Bradley. Vi lachin a verchool at son again. Ach, Dienach Quinton Ganu. Bidigin nach Lucas of Verta. But you stacher did it here again. Agus Shin scored the score. Dierig techt lastig de Shin. McGuigan bacon noch se body. Koshe Pinte. Tahi Numlian. Agus an Durden Coronavirus. Stacher to Cassidy. But you stacher get shoot. Agus tan Sprukheimsche Illigier. Nu ven alle Schemata. Neide Schacht geschlecht neil. Neide Kerry GAA and Nemo. Shachune, going the Greenish, a toot fair feint to pull to Ordige, ach pull to Lastig and Gule, a Dermoyer, on a scoring a Horgan. Deshin so get Tomás Ó'Sé, half feint to Facht again very well, Tagadain. Agus time Deshin so get, and the four in the Harmo, and the Yasoig. Bash to Shina Shady, Agus Clachlo, and Nacher Shano Shachnomut. Horgan, a Durn the Curriga, Conley Leshagas, Gosha Borda. Nemo and Bordor Favre, Agus Ta Colon, Cormac O'Doherty, Jack Donovan took a first score again, Agus Ta score Fachtenson, Count finish, Hunshin, a Choramo, British Dachage, Agus Ta Lucht, Renisut, Taston, Le Closensa, Henado Yegan Tev, an breisiú le techt agus tá Connolly fell de pass ach tá Barry O'Driscoll treis cinenne dhéanamh an pointe ógant I Lorsley se chun Connolly seansal ar bháide. A mar na barca chaún gaisci dhéanamh agus Paul Kerrigan agus sin pointe le seachan an dlímal go chuir Connolly Howell agus tá roundach pointe sa líontá ag Lou Connolly. Se rinhaní mo chuircaí dóna díag. Slechnail chuide héana na cehardíag.
Yeah, big win there for Nemo Rangers, and they're obviously, as I said, in the club final on St. Paddy's Day. That should be a good double header against Corofin. Hard to pick a winner from that one, and then cool against the Pierstick in the other one. Anthony Moyles, good morning to you.
Morning, Ger.
Watching Tomás Ó'Sé out there at 40, you thinking, I shouldn't be managing, I should still be playing, kicking a bit of ball?
So for us all yet. Yeah, I might come back. I might have been threatening it. I've taken the boots out of the bag on a number of occasions. Yeah, realised at the weekend that I have a couple of studs missing. So I might just get that organised first before I actually decide to
sometime around next Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
for a charity match.
Yeah, it looks good there, but you know, you kind of no, I've done a little bit of training actually. You do miss it, you know, and if you can get back into it and just kick a bit. Now it'll probably be a different story when I actually get onto a pitch.
Yeah,
but phenomenal achievement by him. Like he's like the old Rolls Royce. He's just motoring brilliantly.
Yeah.
You know, there's absolutely no difference in him. You know, you can't see anything, you know, physically or even, you know, from a performance level different from even a couple of years ago.
No,
but he's leading the charge there. You know, it's not like they're trying to protect him either. Like, you know, he has a full-on job. He's being marked by younger guys, older guys, and he's taking it on. You know, it's brilliant to see.
I also think that we've all tuned into the stories about the club games over the last 5-10 years, and we fully appreciate that like teams like Nemo come along and obviously they're a superpower, but the Slaughtneil story has been one of the greatest stories in Irish sport over the last 4 or 5 years, and these games are starting to get the level of attention, and maybe this helps as kind of just setting the mood music for our conversation here about the CPA, is that like a focus on the club game isn't to the detriment of the inter-county game, and isn't to the detriment of the sport, and isn't to the detriment of the amount of coverage that you're going to get. It's just different, and you would have to argue better that more stories are covered than just the Dubs and just Kerry.
Well, I'd say from, you know, the media standpoint, you know, and I even know from coming in here, you even think about, you know, you talk about Dublin week in, week out, and it's just kind of like, where can we go with this story? Whereas, you know, and not, yeah, of course you see plenty of coverage, but I'd say, like, I mean, the different stories within Slaughtneil, the different stories around Nemo, the fact that O'Shea is a Kerry man playing in Cork and his kids are there and all that kind of stuff. Like there's, and I'm sure if you delved into those squads and even more bases, you'd find multiple stories, you know, and real stories, you know, and I'm not saying the inter-county stories aren't real, but an awful lot of it is protected and an awful lot of it is now, you know, media people around it saying, well, you can say this, you can talk here, you can talk there. Whereas the club stuff is probably a bit of a throwback where fellas will just talk and they won't be worried necessarily about X reading this or, you know, someone actually coming back to me and trying to curb what I'm trying to say. And it is healthy. Like, I mean, there's massive crowds going to these games. And I think the more coverage it gets and the more quality coverage it gets, it can only improve it.
Yeah.
You know, I know I'm moving around a bit, but I was thinking about even, you know, Monaghan at the weekend. Like, Monaghan are arguably punching above their weight for the last number of years with the size of the county and everything else. But then, you know, I've heard people talking about it. Even Duffy mentioned it at Congress, which I was at for my sins. Whatever I did in a previous life, Friday and Saturday at Congress the weekend past. But Duffy spoke about the Monaghan setup, and I've heard this before because I was talking to Paul Finlay about it, the way they play a lot of league games, and they get a lot of games.
Yeah.
But you can nearly see that in the way they're playing, you know, that they're very comfortable with each other, you know, and they're a team that are consistently kind of confident in each other, and they're actually they're very comfortable on the ball. Fellas know each other's positions, and they're, as I say, arguably punching above their weight, and they've been at that top tier now for the last number of years. And I don't know if there's a direct relation.
It feels like there is, though, right?
Maybe there is, you know, like, I mean, I don't think you can have a very strong, it kind of goes back to the club thing. My personal thing on the club thing is, I don't feel you can have a very strong senior club team without having a really strong, say, junior club team, or even, if you're very lucky, an intermediate club team. But if you have a strong junior club team, generally that means that lads are pushing really hard for the senior team, and your senior team should do well. I think the same thing, if there's any read-through, would be that if it's an inter-county setup, if you have a really strong club setup. Now, people will say, well, Slaughtneil, Derry. Okay, and I take that point. But generally you can say that strong clubs generally feed through, and a strong club scene generally feeds through to a strong inter-county team. You know, and I think if you can see by Nemo, I would say whatever they're doing down there, and they're starting to get it right again, that will have to start feeding through to Cork. Now, Cork is, as we all know, a different story.
Yeah.
But I just think that it has to feed into each other. And the club thing, I think there's a massive way to go with the club stuff. You know, I think there's a lot of room for both media attention and everything else around it.
I think part of Pádraig Duffy's biggest frustration was the fact that he's seen everything work well in Monaghan and thought, like, we've given you all the templates, just follow the template, and this will make, because everybody gets games, there's starred games at the start of the year, they're handed out, the county players will be available for those games. They introduced a new thing at the end of last year where there's going to be super bonus points for the league matches involving the county players, like 5 points for winning that game and 2 points for winning all the other games. So
he explained that at the weekend. It took him a while to explain it, which will kind of lead you to believe it's not the simplest thing. You know, if you get a person, say, in from, you know, the States, and you said, well, how does this work? And you started explaining, well, if you have your county players, you get 5. And my only thing on that would be, like, if I was playing for, say, Scottstown, and we had a lot of inter-county players, and we were playing whoever you are, right? And you don't have those inter-county players, and you fancied beating us, and then we all landed in with our county players, we hammer you, and we also get 5 points for it. Whereas you actually only get 2 points for beating someone when you don't have county players.
Yeah.
So I don't know how exactly, but do you know what? It's innovative,
and they're trying something.
And
they're trying to improve a system which already seems to be working very well, which is opposed to the, well, if it ain't broke, we ain't going to fix it, which is like, you know, at least there's a sign of progression, and they can always go back next year if it doesn't work. So talk to us a bit about Congress before we get to the specifics of what happened with the CPA, because I'm interested in what it's like for an outsider, because you are now officially, despite the fact you're steeped in the GAA, you're officially
No, we were very much an outsider at this one. I was laughing with Micheál Briotti, the CPA. I was laughing with him, saying, you know, will we actually be sitting outside the room in, like, you know, in a darkened room with the stuff just being piped in, you know? But we did manage to get seats at the back, which was great, which was fine. No, it was like, I have to say, it's very, very well run. You know, Croke Park lends itself to it brilliantly. It's done very, very professionally. You know, but you know, just sitting there, if you're sitting there and you just kind of sit down, you kind of say, okay, let's have a look at the actual people who are involved. Like, a lot of grey hair, right? So the average age is probably, I'd say, 65 plus, maybe. Very few women at it. And just a lot of, like, I mean, now there was a couple of younger guys, like, kind of our age, shall we say, not you all, of our age, you know, wearing their club top or something like that. But a handful, you know, you might say 20 to 25. And then, of course, like everything, you know, probably the more vocal people are the people who've been steeped in it for the last 35 or 40 years. And you can certainly feel that there's, you know, it's funny the way the thing is set up, because you sit in a certain area, you know, in the room. So we were, right, obviously the GPA were pretty far down the back, followed by maybe, say, New York and a couple of other foreign ones, and then actually Meath, funnily enough, were beside them. But right up the front are Dublin and Cork, right, which is kind of, maybe it's just by accident, but it's probably
they get in early, like the Germans, put the towels in the seats.
Yeah, well, I think the towels are already laid down for them, you know. So if you're looking at the power broker, shall we say, I think
are they literally assigned seating?
Yeah. Okay. You get certain places in the room. So all your delegates will come in. If it's 7 or 8 of us, we'll actually be assigned, and we sit down, and then away we go. But look, it's you know, I have to say, Friday night was pretty, you know, ran through pretty quick, about maybe 3.5 hours. It was really just about Duffy and you know, certain eulogies for him. And then Saturday kind of got into the motions. It was funny, everyone got their zapper thing on the Friday. So when you come in, you get your zapper, you know. And then there was, so there was a thesis on how to use that, which was 1 or 2, yes or no. But everyone was told, now lads, make sure you bring your zappers with you in the morning. Wherever you go tonight, don't leave your zappers behind you. I was just kind of thinking, we probably should have just given the zappers out on Saturday morning then, you know, because I can only imagine the amount of zappers that are left behind in various different places over the years. You know, whoever. But, like, I mean, massive. Another amazing thing which people mightn't know is the amount of votes that the foreign, you know, participants and delegates get. You know, like, I was trying to tot them up as they were being called out. I think it's 80 something or something that goes to, like, the Middle East, Australia, Canada, Warwickshire, Heaslip, you know, all over, you know, the States.
Are they all
New York,
represented in person at Congress?
Yeah. So you'll have your delegates, because they actually call out to say, you know, Heaslip 6 delegates, and they might actually, no, only 5, you know, so only 5 minutes. But, you know, that's so everyone gets, and they tick them all off, you know. So it's quite a big pool. Like, I mean, there's about 300 odd, I think. I don't remember exactly the number, but it's probably about, it's well over, probably, you're talking a quarter of votes are foreign delegates, shall we say, and they're a big swing on certain things, you know.
Do they tend to vote as a caucus? Like, really, you know, even within that, are there different?
Well, we'll never know, Ger. That's the thing. That's
a good point.
You know, who knows whether they vote as a caucus? And that's just the thing about our motion, which was soundly beaten, shall we say. And it's funny, you know, like, for people who don't know, what we were trying to pass, we put in 8 motions, and we actually eventually we got our first, we got one to it, which was basically about accountability and traceability. So the fact of, you know, Owen presses 1, and we're coming from the Kerry delegate, and we're meant to press 1 on this, which is yes, but I decided I'm going to press no here. And instead of actually then being accountability and traceability for it, well, which way did you actually vote? No one ever knows. It's just put up on the screen and away you go. The technology is there to do it.
Well, it must be if they've got individual zappers.
Yeah, it's there to do it. You know, it can be actually instantly. It could nearly break it down on the screen.
We'd be here all day. I read that. We'd be here all day writing down, but the computer just belches it out afterwards.
Correct.
What was the actual reason? Well, like, what was is it the whole kind of, we don't want to be dictated too much? Was that the essential mood music around this?
I don't want to presume, shall we say, right? But, like, I mean, the Cork delegate spoke, and she spoke fairly well, and she was kind of making the point of, you know, that if I can't be trusted by my club to vote the way I'm mandated, well, then people should remove me. But my argument on that is, well, no one will ever know which way you voted, so you could tell them you voted exactly the way you're mandated, but you actually didn't.
Yeah.
And, like,
That's a ridiculous argument.
Yeah, it doesn't really hold true, and I think she was kind of basing her arguments on, you know, that people should trust me as a person who's been put in this position to go and carry out what, and we weren't saying that. It's nothing about trust. It's nothing about being honest. It's like, I mean, I could go to Congress on the Friday, and I could be chatting with you on the Friday night, and the vote could be Saturday morning, and you could just convince me. You could say, listen, this argument, you know, and we could have a debate around it, and I say, actually, do you know what, Owen's right there, I'm going to switch. But if I do switch, make sure that I can go back to my club or my county delegates and say, well, actually, I did switch, and here's the reason why. Like, I mean, it's a democracy. So, and don't be afraid. If that's like, what is the point? I don't see, if you're big enough and bold enough to be in that position, and you are assuming a position of responsibility, well, then, if whatever way you vote, be damn sure that you can stand over and say, no, I voted that way.
I saw one of the counter arguments was that this will shut down debate by, if you're mandated to go to vote on a topic, then what's the point in debating it, because everybody's already made their mind up when they come. But that's not really the point of this, is it? The counter, so the argument is that you guys are from Kerry, you've been mandated to vote 1, that's all you can possibly do now, and you're stuck with that.
Yeah.
You can't even listen to the arguments, you can't change your minds. But that's not really the point of it, is it?
Absolutely not. Of course you can. Of course you can listen to it. That's not what we were saying. The whole thing is that, well,
can we actually just but we can change our minds.
Correct.
Because that's the whole point now.
You can change your mind, you can do whatever you like, but if you do change your mind, because of the accountability and traceability, be in the knowledge that your club or your county people back home, your county board and your club delegates will see that and then may ask you and say, well, Owen, why did you actually change that? And you say, well, actually, I spoke to X and we had a really good debate on it and I felt this was the way to go. Now, they might say, well, you just keep changing your mind and we're actually just going to take you away from that.
Fair enough.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, there was, I have to say, there was a European delegate got up and spoke, and he spoke actually last year as well. And the funny thing about this, the 2 CPA motions, it seems, which is kind of strange, last year and this year. So last year about the accountability, or not the accountability, but the recognition of the CPA. If you remember, Nicky Brennan had to pull the ripcord on that one because I think pitchforks were going to start coming out at one stage.
Against you?
Yeah, yeah. Like there was 4 or 5 people who stood up and said, you know, there was a fair bit of, let's say, vitriol in their language they were using. But anyway, this guy Tony Bass, who's the European delegate, he spoke last year and then he spoke again this year. And he used words like Trojan horse. You know, he was saying that, you know, we all know where this is coming from. It's coming from a nutty group, as in the CPA.
You're a nutty group.
We were, we're not needed. There's only one association that looks after clubs, and that's the GAA. And all this different kind of stuff. And it was pretty emotive language, I have to say, where she was, like, I mean, her argument was, you know, quite succinct. His was quite emotive and kind of, you know, and just...
When he's making those points, is he getting from the crowd, or is it like everybody going? Cheer?
No, there was very little reaction, but that it doesn't lend itself to that. It doesn't go that way. Some people will get an applause for something after they sit down, but he did. I can't remember if he even got an applause. I think I was just pretty kind of annoyed at that stage, and I can't remember. Like, I mean, you know, his argument was that, you know, this was going to be like a Trojan horse, you know, and he kind of said...
What are you bringing?
I don't know exactly what that meant, you know, that... then he said that he was all for traceability and accountability in every other walk of life, but just not in this. And that one kind of lost me as well.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know, like, you know, we've kind of, between ourselves and the CPA, we're kind of saying, you know, there's this county board thing, then there's us out here, and we're trying to say, like, all we've ever done, and it's getting to actually John Horan's, you know, nomination, and one of the things he said, which is what he wanted to set up this executive club committee. The first thing we said when we set up over a year ago was that everyone should come together, all the stakeholders, and sit down over a weekend and just create a fixture plan. And I'm kind of going, is that an executive committee for clubs?
You're not going to be on this executive committee, for clarity.
Well, we don't know yet. We would hope to be. Well, obviously the man isn't even, he hasn't got the foot under the desk yet. But hopefully we've sent a request to meet him, and he said, look, obviously with Congress, he said he'd be delighted to meet us. So hopefully he will meet us now after, in the next number of weeks. And then obviously you'll have the new Director General, so hopefully meet that person as well. And I would hope that we are in there, involved. And hopefully he can, you know, because... Like, I think he's a very genuine man, and I know some people who know him very well, and they speak very highly of him. So what I'd hope is that a lot of presidents, a lot of people have spoken about the club, and yes, there's been some stuff done around it, but, like, I mean, the very simple thing which we all know is that a club person just wants to have a set fixture list. And you know, I think it's disingenuous, I think, to say, well, we'll kick it off back down to the counties, the individual counties, because all the various stakeholders, from an inter-county manager to this and this, are all pushing in. I think you still need the leadership from the top on whatever way it is going to be.
The counties have proven incapable of doing it in most cases. There are some standout cases like Monaghan who seem to have got it right.
Yeah.
Most other counties have been incapable of doing it, and so we can repeat the lessons from the past, which is the definition of insanity, or we can actually just change it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I mean, look, there's a bigger question then of the inter-county calendar and everything else, and they're not mutually, you know, exclusive here. You know, there has to be a tie-in, well, of this, and people are kind of saying, oh, the CPA are all for the April thing. The April thing wasn't necessarily something that we were hanging our hat on, but we were saying that, you know, you have to have some kind of a club period early on in the year, or then people may actually go right through to the end of, like, the start of August, without anything really, you know, a couple of league games or whatever it is. Yeah. And fellas will just say, listen, I'm getting 10 games here for training for 6 or 7 months.
But there is also the element of compromise here as well, isn't there? As in, you realised, I think everybody realises that you're not going to get the overhaul that is so badly required here. So at least come away from the table with something, which is what you got in terms of April. And I think you've admitted before, it's not ideal, but at least it's something for the club player. And I think some people then view that as, oh, the CPA got what they want. That was their aim. They got April, and let's see what they think then after April is done. Yeah, and that's not necessarily what you wanted in the first place anyway.
No, and it's not. You know, like, I mean, Liam Griffin and the boys would have done up various different plans, which were a whole lot more controversial, shall we say, you know, which was regard of the actual inter-county structure and the provincials and everything else, which actually would have allowed a lot more time to actually get things done. But we didn't even kind of reveal them. I think we showed them to you guys in certain parts of the media. But no, it's not. But, like, I mean, we have said from the very, very start, the main thing is actually, the first thing that should be done, and the last thing that should be done, is that you get everyone around. The CCCC, whoever else, the college, GPA, you know, the GAA itself, obviously, and various different parties, and you sit down and you say, right, blank canvas, where are we going here? Because, you know, I was thinking about this over the last few days. And then I was thinking about the demographic of Congress. Like the younger people and the guys I'm, say, training of 17, 18, 19 and the dropout rates, that these people aren't seeing that. You know, they're not seeing the alarmist statistics that are there, which are actually saying, and it's kind of, I know I don't want to make a direct comparison here, but it's kind of like the Catholic Church to a certain degree, that, you know, the mass goers are dropping off alarmingly. Priests going into the priesthood are dropping off alarmingly. And then only when it comes to crisis point do they say, whoa, we're actually on our knees here and we need to do something about it. And everything looks great, I think, from a GAA standpoint. You know, revenues are good, all the earnings are good, etc. So up here is excellent, you know, on top of the water. But below the water, I think there's some serious issues. And even deeper issues than, say, some people want to talk about, which is, you know, even just, as I said, the fixtures and inter-county scene and elitism. There are some serious issues at underage level and as you go into adult level, that if they don't, you'll very much find that clubs will have to start coming together, that there'll be a lower participation rate, and all that stuff will start to kick in.
So effectively, the CPA could end up being the voice for those players. Like that, so at the moment, you know, we're the association for clubs is the argument from the floor, so they don't need you. But actually, what they do need is the infusion of somebody to represent the views of the players who are 17, 18, 19, 20, up to the mid-20s, who aren't elite intercounty players. Everybody else has a voice, except the coterie of players who effectively make up the reason the thing exists.
Yes.
Which is games for people to play.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, okay, the whole cultural element of the thing, grand, fair enough. But there's also this, the reason that every club gets organised is because people want to play football and hurling.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, look, that would be fantastic, but we're not even even putting our hands up for that role. You know, we're just saying, let's just try and actually make it a bit easier for these people, and let's make it a bit more enjoyable, and let's make it a bit more sure for these people. You know, and that's the certainty is the big thing, and I think people miss that. It's not like, you know, 30 or 40 years ago, or even 20 years ago, where you just picked up the old bag and the boots and you just headed to the game. Like, there's so much more built around it, even at the club level now, and I even see it with the team I'm managing at the moment. Like, these guys want, you know, organisation. They want to know where they're going, and they detest change. You know, but something happens and something they just get so annoyed about it. You know, and it is very annoying for them. You
mean change of fixtures and that kind of stuff? Change
of fixtures and, you know, things being cancelled and this and going on, that going on. So I think this year is going to be, obviously with the Super 8 and everything else, I think this is going to be a serious litmus test for the sticky plasters that we would feel have just been applied. And eventually someone is going to have to grasp the fact that, listen, the sticky plasters aren't working here. We just have to completely take those away, and we have to go back to the patient and see exactly what the situation is. And if Horan is the man for that and a new Director General, well then, brilliant.
All right, let's move on and talk about some of the actual football at the weekend. The Galway footballers look like they have a team worthy of the great Galway football teams. Are we overrating what happens in late January, February and early March?
That's just what Galway people will want to hear now. They're literally going, it's exactly what Mayo people will want to hear. I watched them a couple of weeks ago against Donegal, and I noticed a few different things in them. Like, Galway were always a lovely team to play against. We always had big shootouts against Galway.
Yeah.
And I always got very, very afraid of playing Galway, because you never knew what exact Galway team were going to be. But they had the ability up front to absolutely clean you out as a defender, you know, between, you know, the Meehans and all the Joyces and everything else and the Savages and all these fellas. But there was always a feeling that, you know, if it got into an arm wrestle, that they could snap and you could take away yourself. They're starting to dispel that myth big time. And they're doing it because, yes, they're a bit more solid at the back. I don't agree with certain quotes which are saying they're Tyrone-like. They're not. They still leave an awful lot of quality up front, be it Shane Walsh or Comer. But Comer's actually coming back in a bit more into not a defensive duty, but he's just coming, breaking lines, and he's very dynamic coming out of the ball. They generally leave Walsh and they leave a couple of other guys. So they have a presence up front. And they have got a really good defensive unit, and they've got a serious set of forwards. They've got some really excellent talent up there. And guys who can just take you on and kick scores and kick them for fun. I think Mayo, you know, I think Connacht is going to be really interesting this year, because I'm watching Mayo and I was trying to say, and we've always said this the last number of years, who can Mayo unearth? And they've unearthed no one again, right? So they're going back to the well again, and they're trying to go, right lads, one more push here. And yes, they're very resilient and they've been able to do this, but eventually that is just going to be, it's not going to be a very big thing that they get hammered, but it's going to be a kind of a 70, 69, 70th minute where they just say, I just don't have this anymore. You know, I just don't have it. And I think Galway's hunger is going to be enormous this year.
The big test always for Galway though is Croke Park, and I do think in the Connacht Championship clash Galway could actually go into that game favourites, and Mayo will probably be a little bit undercooked for that. And the test is, as I say, once you get into the Super 8s this year, as it will be, and how Galway perform there, because as you mentioned yourself, it is this kind of men behind the ball, but it's a quick break. It's not a Tyrone comparison, it's a Donegal and a Jim McGuinness comparison, really, isn't it?
Yeah, similar enough, yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like, how does that translate into Croke Park? Will Croke Park actually make a difference with these tactics, or are Galway set and ready to finally make that breakthrough?
Yeah, they've struggled always. You know yourself. They've struggled in Croke Park. Is it a mental thing? I think Walsh is a serious operator. You know, he's a guy who's a very smart individual. He would be quite belligerent and would be a very tough and forthright man himself. And I think you're seeing that in his team. He was always a very smart player, you know. For the size of him, he just used to link in so well with people. Like he'd Donnellan beside him, so he'd do the very, very simple things, but he'd do them so well. You know, he'd never give a ball away, and I can see that starting to come in this team. There's much less of kind of shooting off the hip, you know. And you have a spell of brilliant football, and then you have just a couple of brain farts happening, and teams are just rattling in goals against them. I think he has decided, obviously, that what we need to do is we will score, but we're conceding a lot at the far end. Does it lend itself? You know, I think the more you play in there, obviously it will help with the the dynamics and the size and everything else, the dimensions of Croke Park. But I can't see how it wouldn't, Owen. If you're confident in the system that you're playing, and you also at the far end have guys who can break at pace and punish you at the far end, I think they could be dangerous this year. You know, I'm not completely buying into the hype, because they have that ability to let you down. Yeah. But I certainly think they're on an upward trajectory. There's no doubt about it. Like, they were everyone's favourites to be relegated.
Yeah. And here they are. I think they've been unbelievably impressive. We do talk about Dublin a lot, but Conor McKeown's made a really good point today in the Herald. Assuming that there's nothing unexpected about his team selection for the Kerry game this weekend, it'll be more than 2 years since he last gave a league starting debut to a defender. So they've obviously got a brilliant defence. Yeah. But they've got the same defence for the last couple of years, and they just need a little bit of. We talk about the embarrassment of riches they have, but if say John Small is gone, and say you were to add another couple of names to the list of players who are gone, if Philly gets injured, and Mick Fitzsimons has a red card that they're trying to get overturned, if Cooper goes, they will have injuries at some point over the championship. It's whether or not 3 or 4 of them happen at the same time in an All-Ireland semi-final or an All-Ireland final that you begin to think, well, actually they don't have an embarrassment of riches right there.
I always felt that the defence side of it was a little bit thin on the ground, but it's only thin on the ground because he has very rarely experimented with the defence. Like that's the case in point there, that he has a set group of players and he just slightly changes them around. So he has massive confidence in it. Like, you look at the Mayo game at the weekend and Mayo are missing it, but then you look at the Dublin team and you go, that's probably not far off a championship starting team. Like he has all the big guns out there, bar maybe 1 or 2, even up front. So like they're ruthless in the sense of, and even the management team and everyone, like they do not want anyone getting a win over them. They don't want anyone getting even a psychological edge over them. So they've gone and they've obviously, like you can kind of think he'll just take the foot off the gas and he'll try to experiment with a lot of younger guys and but he has blooded guys in at certain points. And the one thing I look at from a Mayo point of view, and we say, can you unearth a player, be it a cornerback or a corner forward? It is one of the hardest things to do if you come in as a new player and you're into an experimental team which has another 7 or 8 players. Like, you're on a hiding to nothing, especially as a defender, but even as a forward. Whereas the best way to kind of start to making your name, like a Scully or someone like this, like a Howard, is that you come into an already set unit and you're just added in as part of maybe 10 or 12 that are already there. And you're playing with these guys who are playing with a straight, and then you actually feed off that and you get shown up well. Or you stand out like a sore thumb and you're gone. But the other thing is you can kind of get caught between stools. Did he play well? Didn't he play well? We hammered them, and so I always feel that you have to be actually playing your best team, and then you link in your one or two who you're thinking, okay, these are the potential guys who are going to make our championship. But on the Dublin thing, the defence has been unbelievable. But the chances of all of them getting injured, Ger, is a hope factor for a lot of teams.
Yeah.
They just seem to be, you know, well able to do it. You've got O'Sullivan obviously to come back in, but the likes of John Small. John Small is, I think, has been one of the best players for the last, you know, year, 18 months. That guy is just a formidable force. I think he's better than McMahon and Cooper at what he does, in the sense of he's actually being deployed now to pick up the danger men, and he's very, very good at going forward. He's very dynamic. He's very powerful, and he's also, you know, quite forceful. So you're not going to get anything easy in that defence. McMahon, Cooper, all these fellas, they're not going to give anything away easy.
Is there also the case that a couple of those half forwards actually are auxiliary halfbacks if they need them, and really that's where the strength and depth is? When you look at it, it's not on the bench, it's players who are already maybe out in the field who can shuffle back and play right halfback, or maybe somebody else is a sub sweeper who we don't know about.
Yeah, and they do a bit of that, and then, you know, so those guys do go in, and they I wonder, they played Tyrone a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you remember that game. And Tyrone exposed them very much with this kind of Stephen O'Neill ball, which was, you know, guys going, say, left to right, and then they would put a pass into the left corner. So in all sense and purposes, it looks like they're going to kick it into the right, you know, into the corner forward, but then they switch it. And that was a real O'Neill thing to do. When you were marking him, he'd make a run one way, and then he'd double back, and the ball would already be there. And they did that really well. But the second half, Dublin just deployed McCarthy, I think, and can't remember who the other person was, but they just sat them literally at the kind of the top of the D.
Yeah.
One in that area went, and they just completely cut it out, and they just said, right, you know, now we try and run through us. So they can play it every way, and they are quite defensive. You know, this idea of that they don't have fellas behind the ball, of course they do. They've lots of fellas behind the ball, but what they do have is, and I've been on the defence about Kilkenny, the one thing about Kilkenny is, if they get that ball out and they need someone to win it, he wins it.
Yeah.
He wins it 9 times out of 10, and then he doesn't let it go. You don't get a tackle on him. Now he may go running across the field with it, but he does enough to give time for fellas coming up, and he picks the right pass. Or if he needs to speed it up, he'll give a good ball inside. He's a vital cog in that wheel of defence to attack.
It seems to me that Paul Mannion's going to take that leap this year, just in terms of the forwards in Dublin, of becoming a top 3 potentially forward in the country, because maybe he's been underrated for the last couple of years. Maybe the Connollys and the Brogans have always just been pointed out as the talent in the team, and maybe Mannion's always been more effective from play. But it seems this year, certainly against Mayo on Saturday, he was outstanding, and it seems that he could be a contender for Player of the Year.
He's lightning quick. He's a lot stronger than he was. He can win it probably in a various amount of ways. I think one of his things a couple of years ago, I remember watching him actually playing Meath, and he was the one that everything actually else was matched up pretty well, but he was the one who caused all the damage. But he was quite elusive. He tried to get away from you. Now he's actually running through lads. He's actually holding fellas off, and he has the step if he wants. He's left and right. He's an absolutely serious talent, and he's got gas, which you saw on.
Yeah.
He literally he kept moving away from the cornerback. I think O'Donoghue was.
He did his hamstring at the end of the game, though. Did he? Is that what it looked like? So, you know.
Well, that's not good.
No, and that's the type of thing that you just want to now give him enough rest to make sure that when he comes back in the summer, it's not like a perpetual thing.
Yeah.
They're bringing Connolly off the bench, and he's like trying to hit the Hollywood passes straight away, and I don't know, it doesn't look good for the rest of the country, I would say.
No, the only thing is, you look at it, right, so Brogan has gone, Mannion maybe potentially gone 8 to 10 weeks, depending on a tear of a hamstring, right? You know, okay, you have Dean Rock in there. Now, Dean is very, very good at, obviously, his place balls and everything, but he's a different type of player to those two, right? So, you know, Paddy Andrews hasn't really featured much this year. Paddy's been on the road a long time. You know, some of those fellas who are kind of tipping towards the 30-odd, like, where's the... So Costello was there for a while, but he hasn't really broken through. Yeah. So you've kind of gone from a situation where maybe they were thin on the ground in defence, but now going, actually, maybe they're a bit thin on the ground in the forward line.
Yeah, until Conor O'Callaghan comes back and picks the ball up in the halfway line, dribbles past 3 and smacks it in the top corner.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. But it may be inside forward. So I'm trying to give people hope.
I know, it's too late.
Well, the problem also is...
you enter here.
Yeah, the problem from everybody else's point of view as well is that maybe Baskell and Howard are the real deal. Like, I mean, Baskell was man of the match against Donegal.
Well, that's true. Yeah, yeah, and he could come in and and like I mean, listen, there's a conveyor belt there. There's no doubt about it, and he did show up. He looked like the real deal. But it does take a while when you go break into intercounty. It does take you that 3 or 4 years of just kind of learning and hardening up. Normally, obviously you can have a talent like O'Callaghan and away you go.
Yeah. All right.
It seems like, just one last thing just on Cluxton, it seems like nothing's really changed, because you would have thought, say 18 months ago, you were told that a marker's going to come in and you have to kick the ball outside the 21. You would have thought at that point Cluxton's got to completely redesign his game, and maybe he has, but we haven't noticed it. It's been seamless, this transition. And it seems to me now as well, just kind of on that point as well, that when you push up on a kick out now, it's a completely different game, because everything's compressed between the 45 and the 21 now. You can't go ultra short anymore. So it's a whole new ball game. But as I say, it seems like it's the same old game, and Cluxton's just doing what he was doing 2 years ago.
Same old game, and actually I watched them closely on the kick. Actually, to be fair, the coverage was excellent, because a lot of times it goes behind the goal, and you can really see the way they set up. His greatest ability is the fact that he just stands with literally 2 steps, not even 2 steps. I think it's like he plants his foot and then kicks, but he can kick it 20 metres or you can kick it 50 metres with that setup. So, yeah, exactly. So if you're a midfielder and you're trying to go, okay, and you obviously get sucked in, say, and you're thinking, will he go over my head here to an 11? You just don't know. Because he literally just takes a step and then bang, he sweeps through it. And before you know it, you're having to back up. And as soon as you're backing up as a midfielder, the guy obviously behind you has the advantage. He's getting back to that, the defence is the case. He's just phenomenal. He really is phenomenal. And I think we say it every time. But that is where, to be fair, Beggan is very, very good for Monaghan. He's of a similar type where he's literally just standing behind the ball. Yeah. And he can take that. He has to go back 1 and then to get more into it, whereas Cluxton literally can just take 2 steps. But if you're the keeper who has to take the 3 or 4 yard run, that's the old
too late.
Beggan, the sweeper keeper as well, and in a scheme 2 weeks ago when they got a man sent off, just popped out as a cornerback. Yeah, gave the extra pair of hands, and his distribution is outrageous.
Very comfortable, absolutely, yeah. But I have to say, challengers for unfortunately Meath are, after the last 2 games, Tipperary are quality outfit. And I have to say, I'm not just making excuses, I think Cavan are really improving. And I think Cavan will actually be a decent team in Ulster this year, because they've married a very good defence now with some really good forwards, and they're doing very well. Tipperary, I think, are going to be a serious force as well, and I think they should really be focusing on trying to get into that Super 8. But I think Kildare have been really unlucky. And I'm not just saying that.
I do too.
Think they've been desperately unlucky.
Yeah, and so I'm not actually that worried about it. So if you were to look at the league table, you go, Jesus, no points, this is terrible, it's a disaster. But actually, they've been in every game. They're not like one of those teams who comes up, gets completely outclassed week on, week out, and you go, oh, Jesus, that was a team who shouldn't be. This is relatively early in the evolution of this team still. It's year 3, and I would advocate that they decide that they have a management team in place who's from the county and understands the nuances of all this crap that goes on in the background. So let them have another 3 years and say, right, we're in the middle of a cycle here, and we're going to see how that goes with this group of players. But
I would think you're right, and I think they should do that, because that's you can't turn a situation around, such as say Kildare or Meath, in 3 years. You can't. Your first 2 years are literally getting to know guys and getting to know how they work and who are the flakes, who are not, who are the guys who really put it in for you. Year 3 is putting a little bit on it. You have to have at least 5 or 6. And I think they've been desperately unlucky. Even, Jesus, at the weekend, that was heartbreaking.
Yeah. I mean,
but they'll bounce back from it.
An unusual situation. Because I hope they use it as
I think
a
it will,
motivation.
Because, again, they've a shot to nothing now. They're just going to say, right, come on, we just have to go for it and try to see, can we get a couple of wins under our belt.
And a successful year in Division 2 isn't the worst thing that's ever happened to a good team.
No, absolutely.
Assuming it's successful,
Yeah.
Meath are going the other way, are they?
I don't, I always feel dangerous talk. I remember a couple of games ago after the Clare game, there was, I think there was a couple of quotes of, we'll be able to hold our own in Division 1. I was like, whoa, let's not go there yet. But again, it's funny, Clare, I think, drew with Tip. I think they should have beaten Tip. Meath hammer Clare, annihilate them in the second half. Then Clare come out, and Clare are actually getting some okay results now, you know, and then you're trying to follow through a read-through of actually how things are going. And then, you know, Meath come out against Cavan. They've always struggled against Cavan. I remember even just playing against Cavan. We've always struggled against Cavan's style. And that was a poor day, absolutely. Now, maybe the talk of, you know, that Meath were top of the table and that got to them, I don't know. But certainly the Tipperary game. Tipperary are a good team. Tipperary are a seriously good team. Like, I mean, they're not, you know, it's not like you've got turned over by someone who was, you know, really poor. Tipperary are a very, very good outfit. And I think Tip were completely hijacked by Roscommon the week before, and arguably should be, you know, progressing even more. Are they going back? I think they have to decide. And again, look, I can't comment too much because I haven't been at many of the games. But from speaking with certain people involved, the one thing about the Clare game was that they actually just they took the shackles off and they went for it and they got on the front foot and they kind of really used the pace and power that they have and they had a go. And I think when they retreat and they kind of get into this defensive, I just don't think it suits them. You know, it just doesn't suit the style of play that they're used to. And again, I think you'll probably find combinations that work. And I think there's certain forwards on the team. You can't have the three of them on the team. You decide you're only going to have one of them. You can't have two, and you certainly can't have three. So you have one of those, and then you do something else with the rest. And I think you're finding that. You're seeing it. Interestingly, you're seeing it in Kerry. You know, I think Fitzmaurice is realising if he has Clifford, well then he can't, you know, so he's trying to get his combinations correct there, and you know, unless you're, say, like a Dublin, you know, you can't, you need to just say, right, okay, first of all, we do a la Galway, we make sure that this is set here first and foremost. Now that doesn't mean being ultra defensive, it just means that you have the bodies who can actually understand that.
The architecture.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Anthony, good stuff, thanks very much.
No bother, lads.
Going to talk football now. Obviously, a reasonable performance from Lukaku at the weekend. He came out afterwards and said, why can't I get any respect? I've been scoring 20 goals a season since I was 16, and there's more to come from him. So we got the views of Pat Nevin and Kevin last night speaking to Joe.
You were impressed with him. It's his first time scoring against a team this season in the top 8, which is a not great statistic, but you thought he was good.
Yeah, he was good. He was good. You see with Murat as well. I think it's only 4 goals since the end of September. We spoke about him so glowingly at the start of the season. Pat and I, when we mentioned this, the movement, he's you know how destructive he is. If he's got someone like Fabregas in the side that can pick him out of these passes, it's just not happening for him at the moment. His hold-up play was quite poor yesterday as well. So Graham Souness touched on it post-match, saying the difference in the game was the 2 strikers, and yet Lukaku, for all that we spoke about him, and Pat and I again would have spoken about him regularly over the last few weeks, his hold-up play yesterday was a lot better, and I think in the early stages of the game he had to work his way into the game. I think he wasn't necessarily involved earlier on, but I think as the game progressed it got better and better. And you mentioned earlier on his movement for the second goal and the creating of that second goal for Lingard was simply outstanding. And Mourinho then spoken quite openly post-match about that run he had at the end. That's the sort of thing that leaves when crowds leave the game, that is the last moment that they're thinking, or that is the thing that's fresh in the mind. And that's the sort of thing you want to see from Lukaku, picking up the ball, driving at opponents, because he's got so much pace and power.
Impressed, Pat?
Yeah, he just has to do it all the time, because he's capable of doing it all the time, but he doesn't do it all the time. We chatted about the recent Newcastle game, and it was as if, well, he played a bit better than Pogba, but it was as if both of them just weren't that interested in the game. If you're going to be a world-class player, which I always underline, Lukaku can be. He can be the best striker in the world. There's no doubt about it. He's got the physique. He's a natural goal scorer. We saw that pace. Now, it's not just the fact that he made that run that you're talking about there, Kev. It's he made that run against damn quick players.
Yeah.
And he left them in the trail. That's the bit that got the gasp from everybody as well.
Amazing lighting there on Pat Nevin's computer. Yeah, look, I don't know about Lukaku. I still want to see that performance the weekend, week in, week out. That level of consistency. I mean,
that's shifting the goalposts a little bit.
Well, no, I want him to be consistent.
Well, the criticism was that he doesn't do it in the big games. Sunday was a pretty big game, and he did it.
Sunday was a very big game, and he was really dominant, and he was also creative. But you see him miss a lot, right? And I guess all the great strikers miss a lot because they get a lot of chances and they score a lot of goals. And you know, no one has a percentage ratio. Let's just see it over a period of time in the big games. But it's hard to know if Manchester United is the right team, if Mourinho is the right manager for him, if there's actually, if you were to put him in a team that played amazing football, like what would he be like as the main striker for Man City? What would he be like in a system that plays? And
I'm not sure he would be great, to be honest. I'm not sure he is in that mould of a Gabriel Jesus or a Sergio Aguero, who, granted, has scored a lot of tap-ins, and even I know he's not in the same position, but Raheem Sterling has scored a lot of tap-ins this year because their movement around the box is so good. Now, Lukaku's movement is good as well, but it's in a very different way. He's less nimble than the three lads that City have that are scoring all the goals for them. So I think there's a difference there for sure, but there is an element of City's chances being a lot easier. So I will give Lukaku that. And part of me definitely agrees with you about Lukaku's consistency. I just don't think he's as far off as people think. But is Jose Mourinho the right manager for anybody?
I guess if you're like a defensive central midfielder, it's like
you're Scott McTominay.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a godsend.
I don't know. It's just, we're at an interesting juncture at Manchester United at the moment where they're able to put performances in like the one at the weekend where they win those games, and then they have these awful sterile performances against teams that you think they're supposedly, and looking at the team sheet, vastly superior to. So what is the truth? Yeah,
it's hard to know. Another team who are at a crossroads, of course, are Arsenal. A big one, as we established yesterday, with Gary Breen. And Jack Wilshere took to Instagram yesterday to, I guess, deliver this excuse about the spineless performance, as Gary Neville called it, at the weekend. Hard to put into words my emotions about yesterday. City are a good team and deserve to win. A lot of people have had their say on us, and we have to accept the criticism. That being said, I can't accept some of the decisions. Whatever you say about the first goal, it's a foul. No. The second goal is offside. There should have been a second yellow in the first half. Yes, this happens in football, but it's still hard to accept. People will say we're looking for excuses, but these are facts. There's a bit of Rafa Benitez about that. Facts. Anyway, we need to respond starting on Thursday. Thanks to all the Gooners for your support. And trust me, we feel the same, but we need to stick together. A little bit of a humility sandwich right there. I'm going to be humble at the start, then I'm going to lambast the referee, then I'm going to be humble again and apologise to all the fans.
This stuff never works. You can't come out and criticise the referee after you get beaten 3-0 in the cup final. It just never works. And then everybody looks at you, Jack Wilshere, and goes, well, what did you do for your team at the weekend?
Precisely. It's right up there in the great football excuses. Football has had many fantastic excuses. We've selected a couple of them this morning, and Wilshere's former teammate Kolo Toure, for example, a couple of years ago, after he tested positive in a drugs test, he was facing a lengthy ban, and Wenger, talking about here, spoke about Kolo Toure's excuse that he took a diet pill belonging to his wife because he wanted to control his weight after he had some problems, and he just basically took the product of his wife. Wenger quipping, never trust your wife. That was how he was caught. Classic Wenger there, kind of promoting not a lack of trust within his own family there, which is a little bit...
Never trust your wife.
I know, yeah. It's like some quote there from your manager. It should be, let's not encourage, positive harmony in your family. Let's encourage a lack of trust within your marriage, but basically the thing we learned there, the life of a footballer, sex, drugs and rock and roll and rooting through your
wife's diet pills.
Exactly, yeah. So a stunning excuse there from Kolo Toure. Not as good though as the excuse the Ukrainian football team brought up in 2006 after they were hammered 4-0 by Spain in the World Cup. It wasn't, of course, the strike force of David Villa and Fernando Torres that did all the damage, but the Frogs in Potsdam, where they were staying. The central defender Vazchuk told the Sovietsky sports newspaper that frogs in the Templiner Sea Lake were keeping the players awake at night ahead of their Group H opener against Spain. We have agreed we will take fishing rods to hunt these frogs, he said, which is an interesting one. And then let's have a moment of respect here for Hartmut Pearl, the manager of the hotel where the squad were staying, with one of the greatest lines saying, "There are frogs that croak. This is a nature reserve." So a big slap down there to Vazchuk and his Ukrainian teammates after that excuse. Jose Mourinho, though, as we've just been speaking about, another great user of the excuse. Here he is earlier this year, laying the blame at the foot of the door of somebody else, as he tends to do. Manchester United news, Jose Mourinho turns guns on Old Trafford ball boys for poor form. The kids are in their early teens and selected from local schools that are part of the club's foundation. He's basically saying that the stuttering home form at the start of this year was as a result of ball boys, but at least, it was an original excuse by Jose Mourinho, something that he'd never used before. Oh wait, he had. Let's go back 12 months and look at his excuse from last year, from 2017. Jose Mourinho gives order of the boot to Manchester United ball boys and girls, and he wants the new crew from the United Academy to be employed. I'm not sure if that ever happened, actually. But I guess anybody who says that youngsters in English academies don't get their chance, well, Jose Mourinho there
match day, they get to experience the whole thrill of being shouted at by Jose Mourinho. It's you can't buy that experience. They weren't getting the ball in fast enough was one of the lines there. So why don't they just have a ball in their hands, throw the ball, and then go and get the other one?
Yeah, it's almost as if the goalkeeper should be responsible of having a ball right there. Are you allowed to do that in football? Maybe not. Maybe it's a GAA thing where you can just
ball in the net.
Yeah,
no, you can't.
But yeah,
a ball in the net's a bit dodgy, isn't it?
A small bit, yeah. Maybe we should be looking at that in a GAA perspective. Like, what is there? What is a ball doing there?
Maybe stealing ideas from soccer.
But the one other guy who, of course, was a master of the excuse would have been Mourinho's predecessor, Louis van Gaal. The law of Murphy, the legendary one that was the big reason for the loss to Midtjylland there in the Europa League recently. David De Gea, he suffered a knee injury in the warm-up due to the law of Murphy. And Sergio Romero was terrible due to the law of Murphy. And Van Gaal said that anything can go wrong will go wrong. Of course, Van Gaal was manager of that Netherlands team in 2001 when McAteer scored that goal, and it was the shabby grass, as we can see here, that was the reason for that. The player who said that, Kevin Hoffland, said it meant we couldn't play combination football, and Roy Keane retorted, it's lovely and green and that's all that matters.
Yeah, the wind dried out the grass was what Van Gaal said in his press conference. So obviously they hadn't compared notes. It was too shaggy and the wind dried it out. It just meant that they couldn't play football on it.
You know, it's a reasonable excuse. Have you ever tried to play football in grass that's too shaggy? It's not a pleasant experience.
Or Porky Creve, for that matter. That was an amazing Dutch team. Like, the backbone of the Ajax team that had won the Champions League, all in their absolute peak. And we beat them 1-0 with 10 men.
Yeah, it never gets old.
Big McCarthy was our manager.
Ireland's greatest sporting moment. Let's have well, no, it did get beaten, didn't it, in this century's kind of countdown. Did the Grand Slam beat it? Did Kelly Taylor beat it?
Don't know. I probably had that right up there.
Yeah, it is right up there. But the shaggy grass ruined it.
Because that's the moment. Well, okay, we have to beat Iran, but that's the moment where we start dreaming about winning the World Cup with Roy Keane and the team in Saipan.
How did those dreams turn out?
Well, there's 22 signatures on this ball from the 2002 World Cup. If only there were 23.
If only. What would have happened? I wonder, would it have got too impassioned and would they have lost to Germany maybe? Maybe that Robbie Keane would have got too nervous with Roy Keane right behind him and wouldn't put that ball past Oliver Kahn. Who knows?
We wouldn't have been 1-0 down. We would have beaten Germany in a routine 2-0 win.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? We should create some sort of alternate universe where this actually did happen. Maybe science one day will actually be advanced enough to actually tell us what would have happened.
Carlsberg made an ad. Lenny Abramson directed the Carlsberg ad for the 2002 World Cup where Jason McAteer dreams of winning it. I mean, that's a bit of a dream team.
Yeah, are we ever going to see a team as good as that again?
No.
There we go.
Is that it?
Even without working. Well, there's a selection.
The top five.
Well, I'm not sure top five, but
order.
There's some of the five.
I'm definitely willing to hear people's best excuses for stuff happening to them. We'll talk about one in just a couple of minutes with Michael O'Reilly, who obviously was banned for 4 years yesterday. But in the meantime, the other big news yesterday was that Jamie Heaslip has called time on a glittering, star-studded career. One of the most festooned with medals in Irish rugby history. Here are his former teammates, Stephen Ferris and Gervin Dempsey, talking about an absolutely brilliant career.
And I was fortunate enough to play with him for 4 seasons. And he was phenomenal. He was one of those guys that just trained all the time, was always fit to train, was never really hampered by injury, and just loved the game. He was always a bit cheeky in the changing room, and he was a bit of a messer at times as well, but he loved the game and he loved playing. So just, yeah, it's disappointing, sad news that unfortunately he's had to call an end to a very illustrious career and won nearly everything going in terms of rugby. World Player of the Year, 3 European Cups, playing with Ireland through 3 championships and a Grand Slam winning player as well. I look back and I think about, I'd retired at the time and I was a spectator at the Northampton game, and just to see the impact he had, and it was the influence himself and Johnny Sexton had in that second half of that game was phenomenal. How he carried the ball, how he gave go forward, the leadership he gave from the front was what got Leinster back into that game and ultimately went on to win the Heineken Cup that year, which was exceptional.
Good times, yeah. What an absolute legend on and off the pitch. A very decorated player, but you know he's going to be missed, obviously. But I think he can retire and look back at his career with a lot of pride and what he's achieved in that. He's probably one of the best number 8s that I ever played with, and packing down alongside him, you always knew that Jimmy would have your back. Eddie worked with him. Eddie didn't pick him for the 2007 World Cup, but I think in that decision, Jimmy just bounced from that, and that kind of negativity from that kind of made him an even better player. And from the start of his career to the end of his career, he always performed at a level which was pretty hard to reach. So yeah, I have only good things to say about Jimmy Heaslip, and he'd be sorely missed from the game of rugby, but we can all look back with great pride and memories of Jimmy, especially in an Irish jersey.
Shots fired by Stephen Ferris at Eddie O'Sullivan last night. You can see the rest of that on our podcast of Monday Night Rugby. You can hear it anyway on, just search Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball on iTunes or wherever it is you get your podcasts on the Off the Ball podcast network. You were making the case that maybe that was the greatest back row in Irish rugby history. Ferris at 6, O'Brien at 7, Jamie Heaslip at 8.
I don't think it's much of a take. I think it is like the general consensus, isn't it? Is there a better back row than that? Is there a line in Irish sport, a collection of people that we're going to feel more regret about than, like, we certainly could have got, if Heaslip wasn't so unlucky with this latest injury, to maybe go an extra couple of years, maybe to the World Cup. Ferris, without question,
retired at 28.
Like, just that day when he came into the office to do his book interview, the first time he was in studio since retiring, I think you're like, God, it would be great to have him. Because it was 2015, you're like, we could really do with you in the World Cup. And regardless of the back rows that we're churning out at the moment, and it's arguably our best position in terms of depth and in terms of the talent that we've produced, there's a tinge of regret with that row. And of course, Sean O'Brien could, represent the two boys and come back and win a World Cup next year, of course. Also an unbelievably difficult position on the pitch to play and not get injuries. Like when you look at the O'Brien injury history, when you look at Ferris as well, for Heaslip to get to this point of his career, and there's the three of them there on that picture, that's from the World Cup in 2011. Like for Heaslip to do what he did in that attritional position as the number 8, who's expected to truck the ball up and get tackled by all the big lads in the opposition team, it's an absolutely brilliant career. Yeah, I think there's almost, for me anyway, there's kind of like a reminder that he was a 2-time nominee for World Player of the Year. That, like, he was the best 8 in the world for a good chunk of his career. And is there a sense of underappreciation maybe about all of that? Maybe it'll just take a little bit more time, maybe because it kind of came as a bit of a shock to everybody that it hasn't quite sunk in yet, and we haven't quite fully appreciated what Heaslip was as a player. Well, clearly not. I mean, once you listen to Ferris, but maybe for the rest of us, it'll just take a little bit more time before we realise, Christ, he was a great player. Yeah, I think that there is that acceptance. Like, of course, you think back to the Grand Slam year and the try that he scores in Croker against France. It's like this brilliant kind of double movement, ankle breaking, and we don't really, like, that's one of the great Irish tries. It's like, it's this electrifying moment in that campaign where you're like, hang on a second, we're at it and we're absolutely brilliant. Just watching that again on YouTube yesterday, it was like, this Into the Hill. Brilliant. Yeah, it's an amazing moment. That sort of dynamic nature that he had to be an amazing back rower, as all classic back rows should be, and then that step. Who was it that who assaulted him, who was almost kind of outside of the stadium by the time he managed to get his feet back together and try and catch? One of the French players. One of the French players. The French lad, I believe it's called. The French lad. I'm sure he retired after that. It's probably, I don't know who it could have been, but he looked like a right mug anyway as a result of Jamie Heaslip's nifty footwork. A couple of quick comments for you. Alan Moore says about clamping down on Pep's ribbon. It sets a tough precedent. No rainbow laces or badges, no poppies, no black armbands for dead politicians. Andy Dunleavy says, geez, I can't remember the last time somebody spoke positively about the Cavan footballers. It seems funny to listen to, and I'm from there. Well, it's always at home that we get the most criticism. Isn't that right, Andy? Luke O'Mahony says, Guardiola's stance in Qatar has become even more trickier, seeing the Man City owners are from Abu Dhabi, especially with the current blockade of Qatar by other GCC countries. And David Sheehan says, Moyles channeling his inner Father Dougal there this morning. Which part, David? He's gone now, so we can't put it to him. Don't know which part of Father I'd say just his general demeanour, maybe. Oh, because he was dressed with the... Oh, yeah, okay, I get it now. Okay. It was the physical resemblance. Okay. The tank top. We really should have picked up on that. We're clearly not fashion savvy to make cute quips like that. Yeah, that was pretty bad. Yeah. I was up there with my wig. Did they wear wigs? What was that again?
Paul Cook and Guardiola. Something about the
Wigan and that was a moment that he definitely didn't need to bring back up again. That was
Wig short for Wigan.
That was an idea of this show, and that really says something.
Two lads should be wearing. Neymar ruled out of Real Madrid clash after metatarsal injury confirmed. So this is the news from a routine victory for Paris Saint-Germain against Marseille in Ligue 1 at the weekend. He now has a cracked metatarsal and is done for, what are we at, the end of February? Are we going to see him play meaningful football again this season? I mean, the league is wrapped up, so potentially no, because the
World Cup is the thing.
They're going out of the but this club season. Sorry, he'll be grand for the World Cup. You would consider if he's done it on the 26th of February. Today's the 27th.
It's been a while since we've had a good old-fashioned metatarsal injury. Actually, the cruciates have been in vogue. So have the hamstrings. We haven't had a good metatarsal since Wayne Rooney, maybe, in terms of this level of profile.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So good to see that back.
It's good that David Beckham invented it, and
that's
how it worked. The only other thing that we were going to talk about this morning is Michael O'Reilly has been banned for 4 years. He's going to miss the next Olympic Games. It was confirmed that he had tested positive for an anabolic steroid, and really, this isn't one of those situations where people are going to have much sympathy for Michael O'Reilly. He claimed that he took it as part of a supplement, and it was unintentional, but the case that he made that it was unintentional wasn't believed, and so the maximum 4-year ban has been imposed. Apparently he will appeal that. Obviously he has the right to do that, and apparently as well, part of the delay in announcing this was the fact that he'd been given a 5-month prison sentence, and so hadn't been available to present his defence at various stages. So the Michael O'Reilly situation, not a good one, but pretty clear cut. He is a doper, has been convicted of doping, is now going to be banned for 4 years, and really you'd have to say anytime a doper gets caught is actually a good day for sport, because it happens so rarely that the people out there who are doping get caught. So fair play to whoever it was that actually took that sample in the July before the Olympics, and fair play to the authorities for bringing it out eventually. Been a very long, dragged out case, and it will be interesting to see as the details of exactly why it was and how it happened as that all gets published over the next while.
Is this the part where you all say, and they all lived happily ever after on the Rio 2016 story? Is this the last chapter? Is this how the story ends? Dark horror novel that has been Rio 2016?
From a boxing perspective?
From a boxing perspective, of course.
It is a bit gothic, isn't it? It all ended well for Michael Conlon. He's got to win a world championship, I suppose. Yeah,
there is some sort of redemption about it. Like it does. The Rio 2016 boxing story is kind of like a George R.R. Martin kind of novel feel about it. It's just like, what is the grimmest thing that I can come up with here? It's like, no, not another piece of horror. No, not that person, not again. And I guess some people in George R.R. Martin novels do tend to get some sort of respite elsewhere, like Arya going off abroad. That's Michael Conlon, basically. He's the Arya Stark of the Rio 2016 boxing story.
What's Katie Taylor?
I forgot she fought in Rio, actually.
She's won a world title.
The Olympic champion going in, getting dethroned as Olympic champ by Finn.
Kingslayer? Things going to end up all right for Kingslayer, you suspect?
Kingslayer, yeah, but despite the fact that, does Katie Taylor have a gold hand? I suspect not.
She does. I mean,
I don't think Katie Taylor's hand got chopped off in combat.
No, but like, you know, it's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor for her Olympic medal.
She wears gold gloves.
Yeah, there we go. So Katie Taylor is Jamie Lannister.
There you go. On that note, on that bombshell, enjoy the bad weather wherever it is, and I hope you have some bread.
Because I don't. Raw gone when I went to the shop. It was just empty stalls.
Would be grand. They make more every day in a lot of places.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah.
Now that you live in the city, and it's going to be grand, don't worry about it.
Apparently you can get home delivery and stuff like that these days.
No, not when it's snowing, you can't.
That's a good point, actually, yeah.
Right, we're off to get some bread. Good luck.